You are now watching The Meech.
2015 is often considered to be the dark age of Nintendo. With games like Chibi Robo Ziplash and Mario Tennis Ultra Trash, I can definitely see why, but everyone seems to forget that that year also had great games. Splatoon got its start, and Super Mario Maker is my most played and favorite Wii U game. The often overlooked dark era, for me at least, was none other than 2018. As a wise Tangerine Yoshi once said, it was wait for Smash Ultimate, the year. Most of the Switch games were Wii U ports, but oddly enough, the 3DS had some stellar games that year. But just like 2015, 2018 has a trio of games notorious for either being mediocre or polarizing, and funnily enough, the trio consists of a 2D platformer, a Mario Tennis game, and a party game. In the first episode of the unofficial sequel to the Dark Age of Nintendo, we'll be taking a look at Kirby Star Allies. I absolutely adore Kirby games. I don't often cover Kirby, so it may come as a surprise that it's one of my favorite series. I've played nearly every game in the mainline series, and I've enjoyed pretty much all of them. Kirby Planet Robobot is not only my favorite Kirby game, but one of my favorite games ever. Considering Star Allies was the first true HD Kirby game, I was very excited. There was discussion about it looking like nothing more than another Kirby game in the Return to Dreamland style. Wait, that's an issue? Both Triple Deluxe and Planet Robobot use a Return to Dreamland formula and managed to expand on the ideas greatly, especially Planet Robobot, so I kept an open mind and was excited to get the game. Needless to say, I was a bit underwhelmed. I got the game at launch. It got quite a few updates over the year. As a wise guy once said, adding a stage select menu and opening in Mario Tennis Aces is what keeps players coming back! Now enter my Switch Pro giveaway, will ya? Right, because nobody was engaged in games like Mario Kart Wii and Super Smash Bros. Melee. Nobody remembers those games because they didn't get free updates. There's a lot of discussion about whether or not Star Allies launched complete, so the question is my return to Star Allies as grand as a feast of maximum tomatoes, or will it be as unappetizing as the appetizer from SpongeBob? Our story begins with Lord Royal Highness, furious that a sponge and a starfish popped the world's oldest bubble. Oops, wrong Highness. The story in Star Allies begins with the new villain Highness shattering the Jamba Heart relic. This causes commotion, but Kirby is more concerned about King Dedede stealing all the food in Dreamland. It's up to Kirby to save the day, once again. You probably know I'm not crazy about games having basic and cliche stories, but on the contrary, it may be a bit complex here for the average player. It makes more sense as the game progresses, but it's a little bit convoluted. Good stories are nice to have, and I appreciate that they tried to expand on the lore Kirby games have, but the most important aspect in a platformer is the gameplay. One of the new additions is an interactive world map. It's similar to the one found in Super Mario 3D World. The concept is more realized in the later worlds, but it's just a gimmick in the first few worlds. You'll find a few star pieces, but it's essentially just a fancy way to tie levels together. If you've played most Kirby games before, you'll know what to expect. Kirby can float, copy abilities from enemies, you know the drill. By default, jumping is set to A and B is for actions. Why Nintendo is so persistent on trying to make players use B and A when everyone prefers Y and B is beyond me. But fortunately, you can change the settings to use Y and B. Once I did that, the controls were what I expected and I had no issue with them. But there was something I noticed right away that was incredibly jarring. The game is poorly optimized. It runs at 30 frames per second. I've seen people dismiss criticisms of the frame rate, saying the only people disappointed about it only care about graphics. In a slower paced adventure game, 30 frames per second isn't too big of a deal, but in a fast paced 2D platformer with constant action, it makes the experience choppy. The game easily could have ran at 60 frames per second, because oddly enough, the menus in bonus game do. Maybe I'd be able to forgive the frame rate if the game didn't have so many loading screens. Every time you walk through a door, you'll encounter a loading screen. The first few times, it's not too big of a deal, but they will add up and they slow down the pace of the game. I found a workaround which is turning off display tips and settings. This shortens the length of the loading screens by a good amount and makes the pacing better. I went back to Planet Robobot to see if the loading screens were as frequent there, And they weren't, but perhaps I'm a bit too quick to judge, and I'm sure Star Allies will be a shining example of innovation in the Kirby series. The game plays like a typical Kirby game, but it lives by the mantra, if you can't eat 'em, join 'em. The Friends mechanic is a defining new feature. Kirby is able to throw hearts at enemies and team up with them. They mainly act as computer players in single player, but they can also combine their abilities with Kirby, marking the grand return of combining abilities from Kirby 64 and Squeak Squad. Not all the abilities can be combined. The main ones that can be are elemental. You can combine fire with a hammer, sword with electricity, that kind of stuff. Why ability combining hasn't become a staple for the series is beyond me, because it's an excellent mechanic. The primary mechanic of the Friends is that they team up with Kirby to defeat enemies. In theory, it doesn't sound bad, but they are an absolute detriment to the game in more ways than one. Since you'll have a team even outside of multiplayer, they'll do a lot of the fighting for you. I wanted to see if you could clear bosses by doing essentially nothing, and lo and behold, you can. You could do a sort of Nuzlocke and use your own rules to make the game more challenging, but the game is designed around the Friends. They're required to progress. A good example of a helper mechanic is in Bowser's Fury. Bowser Jr. can help Mario by defeating enemies, and he's required to uncover secrets, but you can change the settings to have him not defeat enemies. If there was an option to have friends not attack enemies, it would make the game a bit more challenging. I say only a bit, because the levels are designed to be easy. The level design in Star Allies consists of larger, more open areas. Large levels are usually a good thing. The problem is, there are many sections that are empty that you can breeze through. Kirby games usually have compact levels, and there's always something going on, but they also encourage exploration with the collectibles. But here, the levels are larger only to accommodate for multiplayer. What's bizarre is that Return to Dreamland had co-op, but the level design remained excellent in both single and multiplayer. The levels in Star Allies are somewhat empty, and are too easy to breeze through. That's also counting the collectibles. The main ones are the puzzle pieces. You'll find them scattered throughout the levels, with the blue ones being common, and levels having one big rainbow puzzle piece. Obtaining them requires very little thinking, and oftentimes, the game will just give them to you. They don't feel satisfying or rewarding to collect. Star Allies is overall too easy. Many have dismissed criticisms directed towards the lack of challenge, saying,
Kirby games have always been easy. What did you expect?
Okay, McDonald's coffee is usually hot, so it'd be perfectly okay for it to be boiling, right? No, that's how you get sued! Yes, Kirby games have always been easy, but they still required you to think. The problem here is that there's not a happy medium. It's so easy to the point where it becomes boring, and that's the last thing you'd want a game to be. With barely any challenge, a lack of optimization, and mediocre level design, things aren't looking too good for Star Allies. You might think that the game is a lost cause, but there are some positives. The final world has some cool levels, and the final boss is excellent. Additionally, you can recruit Dream Friends to be part of your team. What separates them from the other allies is that they're characters from the mainline Kirby games. This is a true celebration of the series, and the level of fan service is so high, it's a reverse modern Paper Mario. HAL really took the fans into account here, and it's cool seeing a great amount of fan service. Seeing how cool the Dream Friends are in the final boss of the game had me wondering, why couldn't the main campaign be as cool as them? The gameplay is a total letdown, but maybe the presentation is better. Kirby Star Allies looks quite nice. The environments are colorful, and the backgrounds are detailed, and the characters look great. But returning to the game, I thought to myself, why didn't I remember the presentation that much? Because objectively, it looks pretty good. That's because the locations mostly consist of ones we've seen time and time again. It's literally like Return to Dreamland, but in HD. If you want to use existing locations, they can still look unique. Going back to Robobot, that game takes place in Dreamland, but it goes all out with the tech theme. It also has memorable locations, such as a city and a casino, and even though the graphics look nice in Star Allies, there's no reason why it shouldn't run at 60 frames per second. I've seen 2D platformers that look just as good, if not better, running at 60 frames. The game looks nice, but that's really it. But the presentation does indeed have a very strong aspect. I love the UI and the artwork. The menus are very clean. They use artwork similar to that of a comic book, and they're even used during the cutscenes. Additionally, the music is pretty good. None of it really stood out for me, but it sounds nice. There are also extra levels in the game that use music from classic Kirby games. It would be a cool throwback if it was remixed to sound like the modern music, or if the levels look like the classic games, but when everything adds up, it does feel kinda lazy. With an underwhelming main campaign and a nice but lifeless presentation, maybe the extra modes could be good. You wanna put me in a bad mood for the rest of the day? All you have to say is a free update that lets you enjoy golf will launch this fall. Yes, Kirby Star Allies is notorious for being categorized as one of Nintendo's fix-it-later games. If you're living under a rock, please let me live there because I can't stand this practice! What happens is Nintendo launches a game unfinished, finishes it later with updates, and cleverly disguises these patches as free content updates. The updates in Star Allies consisted of mostly Dream Friends, and a new mode called Heroes in Another Dimension. The main story mode is the featured mode. In World 1, credits roll at the end of the DDD fight. This would be hilarious if the actual game wasn't so short. There are only 4 worlds in the game. You'll literally be able to beat it within 5 hours at most, and if you're going for 100%, it would take no longer than 8 hours for the average player. It's incredibly short, and keep in mind, this is a full price game. Maybe some of the other modes will make the game worth it. Kirby games are known for secondary modes. I primarily get a Kirby game for the story mode, but I had a blast with extra modes. Some of the modes are so good that they get turned into full games. Let's see what Star Allies has to offer. 2 of the modes are very basic minigames, being Chop Champs and Star Slam Heroes. These are literally just Mario Party minigames, highlighted as featured modes.
Chop wood, no, that's ignorant.
They can be fun, but they belong in something like a minigame mode. It's like if New Super Mario Bros. Highlighted 2 specific minigames as featured modes. Then we get into the Ultimate Choice. Oh, I was ready for the Ultimate Choice, but that wasn't until December 7th, 2018. It's a boss rush mode, and the main gimmick is that it's challenging, and there certainly is a bit of challenge here, but all it consists of are bosses from the main game. Guest Star Allies could have been cool. You play as any of the friends except for Kirby. I would have liked if the game pulled a Luigi U and had a set of new, more challenging levels, but it's just a time attack mode where you play as other characters. At this point, I was ready to give up. But in November 2018, the final major update added Heroes in Another Dimension. In this mode, you clear 4 large levels known as dimensions. Your goal is to get as many hearts as you can. This changes the main objective from being reaching the goal to finding all the hearts. And let me tell you, this was sort of a game changer. Finding and obtaining the hearts requires you to think, and there's the elusive element of get ready for it, challenge, in this mode. But the coolest thing is that each section highlights either a different character or ability. Now I see why the fan service was so praised. This is an excellent mode, and if the base game was of the same quality, I may be singing a different tune. The question is, did the game release unfinished? After replaying it, the disappointing main game certainly didn't help Star Allies' case. I remember when I first played the game, I was underwhelmed, but I wasn't fuming like I did with another Switch game from 2018. Don't worry, we'll get there. But with the extremely short single-player campaign, the lack of optimization, and the lack of ambition, it was most definitely rushed. But if I can say anything for certain, it is not worth $60. It offers significantly less content than the amazing 3DS games, and those games launched at $40. So far we've established that Kirby Star Allies has a snooze fest of a main campaign, a poorly implemented featured mechanic, and an unimpressive presentation. Most of the additional modes are just remixed versions of the base game, but Heroes in Another Dimension added quite a bit to the game, with more challenging levels, and there is stellar fan service. So what's the verdict? As unfortunate as it is, Kirby Star Allies is one of my least favorite 2D platformers. The game is so easy to the point where it becomes boring, and like I said before, boring is the last thing you'd want a game to be. I could maybe forgive the difficulty if the game had interesting new ideas, but it really doesn't, and although Heroes in Another Dimension is cool, the overall game is a disappointment, especially compared to Robobot. I do, however, see what HAL was trying to go for with the Dream Friends. Seeing representatives from every mainline game felt like a celebration. If Star Allies truly was supposed to be the grand finale for the Return to Dreamland styled games, here's what I would have done. The locations would celebrate Kirby's history. You could have a world in grayscale, paying homage to Kirby's start on the Game Boy, perhaps a hand-drawn world celebrating Kirby's Dream Land 3. It would also have new levels and mechanics, but also celebrate the history of the series. But heroes in another dimension and Dream Friends aside, Star Allies is mediocre at best, and a bore at worst. It's rough, but if I'm being honest, Kirby Star Allies gets the ranking of diamond-encrusted trash. Many of the ideas are good, but the underwhelming main campaign could have been so much more. But you know what? I realized something. I should just let people be happy. Many people love the game, and by criticizing it, all I'm doing is being entitled. There's no way I criticized the game because I wanted to see Kirby improve. Just let people be happy, because even though Star Allies was a bummer for me, I'm objectively wrong to criticize it. I'm retiring from doing retrospectives. I'm looking forward to Kirby Star Allies 2 because I would be entitled not to be. Criticism consists of nothing but whining, so I decided to move the channel in a more realistic direction. What time is it? Like 4 o'clock in the afternoon? Hey everyone, welcome to the first episode of Vlogging with Demeech. Just got a few things from the store. Got the hottest Cheetos ever to make the pain burn away. Oh, ignore Toad. I don't like him. Today we'll be playing New Super Mario Bros. U Deluxe. I will say I played the original on Wii U. Nobody owned a Wii U. Just a bunch of posers. This is a new Mario Kart game. I've said before that I found New Super Mario Bros. U to be underwhelming, but the more I think about it, the more I was factually wrong. By addressing any flaws of a game, it takes away happiness that could otherwise be had. New Super Mario Bros. U gets a 10 out of 10. Even though there were some issues I had with the game, I just completely disregarded them, because at the end of the day, pointing them out is nothing but entitled. Really, reviews are just complaining and are completely useless. So I just came across a demo for a game in the Nintendo eShop called Kirby and the Forgotten Land. I must say, Kirby Star Allies is objectively perfect, and there is no way that any game could be better than that. Oh my gosh. This is exactly why criticism and feedback are so important. HAL decided to listen to the feedback and made the ambitious 3D Kirby game fans have wanted for many years. Going from Star Allies to Forgotten Land is an even grander jump than the one from New Super Mario Bros. 2 to Super Mario Odyssey. I am so glad HAL took the opportunity to use the feedback to create an ambitious and passionate Kirby game. The critical crock is here to stay. But in the meantime, I'm going to play Forgotten Land! Thanks for watching, guys! Woo!